bracket is officially set now. We can now finally make our final picks for March Madness, just in time for you to submit your last minute bracket. So let's go ahead and get into this. Alrighty, so we got our bracket over here. We're going to start off with Duke versus Siena. I'm not going to think too hard on this. I think Duke is one of the best teams in all of college basketball right now. So go ahead and give me Duke to start things off right here. And then we're going to go ahead and move down to Ohio State versus TCU. This is going to be a really tough matchup, and I think with this being the first game of March Madness, there's going to be a lot of broken brackets. Granted, I love Ohio State. That's my college team, if you guys don't know that. I do think that Ohio State is red hot right now and very talented. Not that TCU is not, but I'm going to go ahead and take my Ohio State Buckeyes right here. Then moving into St. John's versus Northern Iowa. I think St. John is better than a 5 seed right now. I'm not going to overthink this. Give me St. John for this matchup right here. Same thing with Kansas versus California Baptist. California Baptist has one of the best scorers in all of college basketball right now. I'm really excited to see what Kansas can pull out. I think Kansas is going to pull this one off, no problem whatsoever. Now, we get into a little tricky part here, where we have Louisville versus South Florida. I'm riding South Florida pretty hard on this one. I think that they're going to be the, I guess you could call Cinderella team, and they're going to make it pretty far in this bracket. So go ahead and give me South Florida over Louisville in the round of 64. Then I'm going to move to Michigan State versus North Dakota State. I don't think North Dakota State stands a chance whatsoever. Go ahead and give me Michigan State. Now we got UCLA versus UCF. I know UCLA got banged up pretty bad in the Big Ten tournament. I still think that they have what it takes to pull off this game. So go ahead and give me UCLA. I think they make it to the round of 32. But it's going to be a dogfight, and I could easily see this being an upset. So I don't blame people for maybe fading me on this one. I think UCLA has what it takes. Next, we got UConn facing Furman. Furman did have that great game winner against Virginia. I believe it was Virginia a year or two ago. I think UConn and Dan Hurley's team is too good. Go ahead and give me UConn in this. We'll go ahead and just honestly finish up this side of the bracket. Next, we got Duke versus Ohio State. As much as I'd love to see my Buckeyes pull this one off, I'm not going to believe in it. Go ahead and give me the Duke Blue Devils moving on to the Sweet 16. Now we have St. John's versus Kansas. I think this is going to be a close matchup. It's going to be a very tough battle for both of these teams. I think Rick Pitino and St. John moves on to play Duke in the Sweet 16. Now we have South Florida versus Michigan State. This is probably the matchup that I feel is either going to make or break my bracket. I mean, pretty much right from the jump with Louisville. I do have South Florida beating Michigan State, pulling off the upset on this. I know Michigan State has all the, the third seed. Ken Pom has them as a potential, suitor for the championship. I just don't think it's their year. I think South Florida, they're on a tear right now. I think they're going to continue. We just saw what Miami did to SMU. Not trying to really compare the two, but I think Miami's going to come into this fighting as well. But South Florida does move on to the Sweet 16, where they're going to be playing UConn as UConn takes down UCLA, who is depleted with injury. Now, I think St. John's going to beat Kansas. I do not think they're going to beat Duke. I think Duke moves on to the Elite Eight, where they will be taking on UConn. And now this is tough because I really like both of these programs. And even though Duke is missing Caleb Foster right now, I don't think that's going to be enough to change my mind over Duke taking down UConn to make it to the Final Four. Let's start with this one right over here. So, next we have Arizona in the West taking on Long Island. I think Arizona is just as good as Duke And I think that this is going to be an elite March Madness because of Arizona and Duke. Going to give me Arizona. Next, we have Villanova taking on Utah State. I went back and forth with this a lot. Just everything is telling me Utah State is the way to go with this. Villanova has been historically bad at the free throw line this year, and if you guys watch March Madness every year, your free throws matter a lot. A lot. So go ahead and give me Utah State. I think they make it on to the round of 32 over Villanova. Now, this next matchup between Wisconsin and High Point, this is a pretty popular upset alert. I'm not buying into the upset on this one. I think Wisconsin has too much talent. Although High Point does match up pretty good against them, I don't see High Point pulling off the upset. So I'm taking UConn, as they will be taking on Arkansas, who will be taking down Hawaii. Hawaii is an interesting team. I just think Arkansas is just too much for them. I don't think they're going to be able to stay in the game and make it interesting. Next, we have BYU taking on Texas. Now, this one I had to do a lot of research on because I watched Texas take on NC State, and in all honesty, I thought that their coach, Sean Miller, basically was losing them that game. They couldn't break a press to save their life at the end of that game, and they kept NC State right into that game. However, I have a gut feeling that this is going to be an upset, and Texas will take down BYU. Even with Debanza, I think Texas has a lot of talent and a lot of grit, and I think that win over NC State is going to carry over into this round of 64 to make them move on to the round of 32. Next, we got Gonzaga and Kennesaw State. Gonzaga's going to win this one. I don't think it's remotely close, personally. This one I also had a little bit of trouble with. Miami, Florida versus Missouri. I think Missouri was pretty lucky to get in this spot, especially with the way they performed at the end of the year. I want to take Missouri in this one, but I think I'm going to go Florida, or Miami, Florida over here. I want to see Dennis Gates win, of course, former Cleveland State head coach. Has been killing it over in Missouri, but I just don't think it's going to be enough, where Miami's shown, I think, more promise than Missouri this year. Next, we have Purdue versus Queens in North Carolina. I think Purdue handles this one pretty easily over here. Now, going back up here, Arizona, they're going to take down Utah State. I don't see that one being too much of a dogfight. This next one is a very interesting matchup. With everyone taking a lot of people taking High Point over Wisconsin. I do think Arkansas does have what it takes to take down Wisconsin. I think they're going to, and I feel like this is a safe pick as well, just because of the probability of High Point upsetting Wisconsin. This is a safe pick, and I think it's the right pick as well. So go ahead and give me Arkansas over Wisconsin to make it to the Sweet 16 with Calipari. Next, we have Texas taking on Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga takes down Texas, although I think it could be a lot closer game than a lot of people would like to admit. I'd love to see what the spread will be for this game if this happens. So, yeah, go ahead and give me Gonzaga. I think this is going to be a close game, though. Next, we have Miami versus Purdue. I think Purdue handles Miami pretty easily here. No questions asked. Now, we're in the Sweet 16, where we have, my apologies, Arizona taking on Arkansas. I think this is where the point that Arizona is going to be too much for Arkansas. They're going to try to keep it close in the first half, and then the second half is just going to get away from them. Go ahead and give me Arizona in this one right here. And then we have Gonzaga versus Purdue. This one I went back and forth a lot on, and ultimately I did go with the safer pick. I think Purdue is a very hit or miss team, and I think they've played better teams this year. So go ahead and give me Purdue. Even though Gonzaga has only lost 3 games this year, I feel like Purdue has a better chance of winning this. So now, moving down to the South, we have Florida versus Prairie View. I think Florida handles this one pretty easily. Now we get into Clemson versus Iowa, which is not the sexy game of the round, but I think Iowa does handle this with a better schedule. Pretty similar records for the most part. Clemson being 24-10, Iowa 21-12. I think Iowa makes this game their pace, doesn't let Clemson get into their rhythm. So going to give me Iowa moving on to the round of 32. Next, I have Vanderbilt versus McNeese. McNeese being a Cinderella story last year. I don't think that happens this year. I think Vanderbilt handles this one, playing in the SEC and really holding their own. I mean, they just beat Florida a little bit ago. So going to give me Vanderbilt advancing to the round of 32. Nebraska versus Troy. Troy is an interesting pick on here. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be too much for Troy, though. So go ahead and give me Nebraska moving on. North Carolina versus VCU. This matchup, I can understand both ways. I think VCU, they've been on fire recently, winning 16 out of 17 of their last games. And I think that they move on. They have history in the bracket. So go ahead and give me VCU beating North Carolina in the round of 64 to advance to the round of 32. Next, we have Illinois versus Penn. It's cool seeing Penn make the tournament, but let's be honest, Illinois is a juggernaut. So go ahead and give me Illinois here. Next, we have St. Mary's versus Texas A&M. I'm going to go ahead and go Texas A&M on this one. I could easily see St. Mary's, pulling some magic off. Even though they are the higher seed, Texas A&M just has faced better teams this year, where St. Mary's just really hasn't had that strength of schedule that Texas A&M has. I think this is going to be a close game, but I'm going to go ahead and take Texas A&M to take down St. Mary's. And then next, we have Houston versus Idaho. Idaho doesn't stand a chance. This game could be at minimum 30-point loss. So go ahead and give me Houston moving on to the round of 32. On to the round of 32, we have Florida taking on Iowa. I'm going to have Florida, of course, the reigning champs, move on to the Sweet 16. I don't think Iowa is going to really stand too much of a chance in this and be able to keep up with Florida. Now here we have another interesting situation where we have 5 versus 4. I think Vanderbilt, they've been on fire lately. I think they're more of an even balanced team than Nebraska. Nebraska has the better defense, but Vanderbilt has the much better offense. So I'm going to have Vanderbilt moving on to the Sweet 16. Now we have VCU versus Illinois. I think VCU's magic runs out here. I think Illinois is going to be too much. Go ahead and give me Illinois moving on to the Sweet 16. And I'm going to have them taking on Houston. I think Houston, this could be their chance to be their year finally. So I think they handled Texas A&M pretty easily here. Now, Sweet 16. This is probably my biggest shocker of the whole bracket that I have here. I do have Vanderbilt beating Florida once again. They just freshly beat them. And Florida earlier in the year only beat them by 4 earlier. I think Vanderbilt's going to be on fire. They're going to have all the momentum in this bracket. Give me Vanderbilt to take down the first number 1 seed in Florida. Next, we have Illinois versus Houston. I think Houston advances. I think this is going to be a closer game than people think, but I think Houston advances. And they have all the momentum going into the Sweet 16. Elite 8. My apologies. And I think Houston does take down Vanderbilt. I think that the coaching in Houston is just going to be too good. The players are very disciplined there. So I think the Final Four matchup over here will be Duke versus Houston, which we will get into after we get to this side of the bracket over here. We got the Midwest. Starting off with Michigan versus Howard. I don't think we need to overthink this one. Michigan handles this one pretty easily. This matchup, this is another upset that people have been looking at. Georgia versus St. Louis. As enticing as it is to go with St. Louis, I am going to lean a little bit more on Georgia's schedule, or strength of schedule. Being in the SEC, playing better teams, go ahead and give me Georgia advancing over St. Louis. This is probably one of my biggest upsets that I have in my bracket. Could be the inner Ohio in me. I think with JT Toppin being gone for Texas Tech, I think Akron has a chance to sneak out a tournament win over Texas Tech here. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Akron Zips advancing to the round of 32. And I will have them playing Alabama. As nice as it is to see Hofstra make the tournament, even with Alabama being down a player, I think Alabama handles this one pretty easily. This one is still not showing. Miami, Ohio will be playing Tennessee. I think this is going to be a close game. But I think I'm going to have to go with Tennessee here. Miami, Ohio still has a chance to be a Cinderella in this. And I think they have a legitimate chance of it as well. But I think Tennessee's strength of schedule, the way they've been playing all year, I think it's going to be too much ultimately. Next, we have Virginia versus Wright State, a Horizon League team. I don't see Wright State beating Virginia personally. Virginia just lost to Duke, I believe. Yeah, Duke in the ACC tournament. As cool as a story that would be for Wright State to beat Virginia, I just don't see it happening this year. Next, we have Kentucky versus Santa Clara. I was tempted to go Santa Clara on this one. I was very tempted, because Kentucky has consistently burned me in the past. You know, when you got bad habits, you got bad habits. I'm going Kentucky. Beat Santa Clara, this is their first appearance that they had Steve Nash, I believe. So, quite a while. Then next we have Iowa State taking on Tennessee State. Iowa State's way too powerful. Way, way, way too powerful. So moving on to the round of 32, we have Michigan taking on Georgia. Michigan's too much for Georgia. I think this is going to be pretty easily Georgia's game. Now we have Akron taking on Alabama. I think Alabama handles Akron pretty easily here. Great run. Akron gets a tournament win, but I think Alabama's going to be too much from here. Next, we have Tennessee taking on Virginia. I think Tennessee's going to win this game. I think Tennessee, with their strength of schedule and how they've competed the entire season, I think they're going to be too much for Virginia. Go ahead and give me Tennessee moving on to the Sweet 16, where they will be taking on Iowa State, as I will not be banking on Kentucky past this round until I see different. Now we have Michigan taking on Alabama. I think this is going to be a close game as Alabama plays at a very fast pace. I just think that Alabama's defense is not going to be good enough to take down Michigan. And I think Michigan wins ultimately in this. And I was very tempted to keep going with Tennessee on this, but I also like the balance of Iowa State. So go ahead and give me Iowa State moving on. And I do have Michigan making the Final Four. Did I not? Oh, whoops. So, there we go. We have our Final Four matchup where we have Duke versus Houston. I do have Duke making the championship game where they will be taking on Arizona. And I have Duke taking it home. But other than that, that is going to do it for this episode. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a like, comment down below who you have winning this March Madness bracket. And excited to get back to you guys after the round of 32. Peace.